Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you for joining us for Maximize Monday. Took the week off last week due to the holiday. Some of you may have been off of work on that Monday. I was not, but I still record these on Fridays, and I was not in town last Friday. So just wanted to give everyone some time off. So hope you enjoyed your break. As you can see, a new guest this week. We have Larissa joining us. Thank you so much for jumping on the show to kind of discuss what's motivating you for the week and your journey from education to content copywriting. So very appreciative of you taking some time out of your busy schedule to do that.
You're welcome. Yeah, glad to be here.
Perfect. So if you've watched the show, you know, normally we'll start off just talking about what's motivating us, the goals we have set for the week. So for me, usually I know I kind of talk about sports a lot. The Sixers are in the playoffs right now, so it's first round. I'm used to disappointment, but I have high hopes for at least the first round here. So biggest thing motivating me. I do have tickets to game five. If there is a game five, hopefully. I guess either way, hopefully not. Maybe they sweep, but if they lose the first one or two, then hopefully I do get to go to a game. So that's motivating me. Last week, my wife and I celebrated our 9th year of wedded bliss, but we do not have a sitter during the week, so it was a little
Oh
tough
no.
for us. So the following weekend, so this coming Friday, is when we are going to actually do like an actual celebration. We have
Yeah.
our daughter's going to stay with grandma, so we have a reservation for the hotel where we had the after party after our wedding. It's dessert week
Oh,
in downtown York, so we're getting to experience all of that. So that's going to be the true like night out. We did the family dinner on our anniversary, so still fun.
yeah.
But now the two of us get to a official date night without the little one for first time in some time. And
I was
then
gonna say, does that happen often?
not often, but she's
Yeah.
been in restaurants, so we don't mind taking her out, but it's got to be like family themed restaurants. We don't take her
Yeah.
to any nice romantic places and have a wild toddler running around while everyone else is trying to enjoy their meals. And
Mm.
the third thing that's motivating me is you've probably heard me talk about Netflix show binging on these shows here before, and we're kind of through all the binging. We caught up on You. We finished Love is Blind. So now we're looking for like that new show that's gonna to reel us in. I'm pretty hesitant with like the reality-based shows. My wife is not, but Love is Blind is the one that she kind of got me hooked on. So now I'm a little bit more open to future paths down those type of reality-based shows. So we'll see if maybe I become a fan of new ones on that. So we're gonna like sit down and go through all the shows that we have had saved and have not had the time to dive into
Mm.
yet, and just finally pick one. So motivation just to that 30 to 45 minutes at the end of the night every day to just kind of say, what do we want to do? Let's put this on until we fall asleep. So looking forward to that. So goals I have for the week ahead in terms of work. So I had a short week the week before. My teammate covered for me. He is actually going to be on vacation next week, so I'm covering for him. So biggest goal is just making sure I do for him what he did for me while I was out, making sure all the interviews are going smoothly, all the candidates in the process are getting updated, everything like that. And then my other goal, I do have two tech focused roles that are open right now. I'm not a tech recruiter, but we do get those positions from time to time. So usually take some changing on my end in terms of how I recruit, what job boards I go to, things like that. So that's going to be the goal this week, is just what I can do differently to focus on those roles as well, alongside the other ones that I already have open. And then my win from the week before, I had two offers extended and accepted last week. So it's a good start to the month of April now for me, with three filled positions and three really awesome candidates that are going to be starting their careers with Novalex. And actually one was a promotion. So two new and one promotion. So all good stuff. So that's what's going on for me this week. Larissa, what is going on in your world?
Well, let's see. What's motivating me right now, my husband and I just bought a house, and so we are in the process of moving. I've blurred my moving boxes in the background. And so that's kind of motivating me of like, oh, it's coming, our move is coming up quick. So we're working on um finding things from the house, scouring the Facebook marketplace for some good finds, and got a little painting we got to do. So that's been the big motivation for us. And just last week we got to celebrate some holidays with little kiddos and our life niece and nephew, and so that was really fun. So yeah, this is kind of like a whirlwind of, if anyone's moved, they know how that goes. So that's keeping me motivated. That and just tackling some projects at work. So things that I'm super excited about for my role. And so that's what's been really fun. And so I've got a couple goals in this next week. I host a podcast for my role. And so it's just working on finding some guests and getting things lined up and scheduled. And so that's one of like the big goal for me, is just to keep working on that. And then also just like creating quality content. I always have that in my head of just what kind of content that I'm writing and creating for my role and for my company, and just making sure that it's good stuff that really connects with people. So I'm a storyteller at heart, and so I always want to make sure that we're tying it back to things that resonate and connect with people.
Okay.
And then yeah, and so my one win from this last week is actually my title is actually a little bit different than copywriter. I know we talked about it, but it's I'm now classified as a digital content creator, because I do more than copywriting. And so I like I said, I created a podcast, so it's kind of has been evolving, and which is really fun. I love that about my job, is I get to do a lot of different stuff. So
Yeah, absolutely. Always continue growing. That's amazing. It's a huge win. So congratulations on that. So the reason I had reached out to you, and you agreed to be on the show, and if you watch the show, it's not always for transitioning teachers, but that's kind of some episodes that I've been focusing on lately, especially as we're now in the spring, the end of the school year is nearing. And so that's kind of the time where transitioning teachers are like, okay, I got to make the decision, got to go full speed ahead in this job search. Do I renew the contract? Things like that. So for you, transitioning from education into content creation, copywriting, was that kind of the path you knew early on was the route you wanted to take, or was that more something, a trial and error, and you kind of discovered it along the way?
It was a little bit more of a discovering. I initially was like, oh, instructional design, because I had spent some time as an instructional coach. I did a lot of professional development, designed a lot of different stuff. And I knew some people in instructional design. So I was like, oh, that seems like a role for me. And what I realized in it was not as much of sort of in my wheelhouse as far as like graphic design or some of those skills that I probably could hone, but it would have been a little bit a longer on ramp for me. I think in the end, some people are really good at that and they have that background, but and so through sort of some searching and trial and error, I kind of came across marketing, really. And so I'm on the marketing team for my company, and I really realized that I kind of had that mindset of marketing in general. And I was a middle school teacher, so I kind of had to market things to middle schoolers a lot. And so, and I really enjoyed the challenge of it too. Just that idea in marketing, kind of the best idea wins a little bit. Like, and I'm a big idea person and really trying to figure out the best idea. And so, the more I looked into it, I really liked it. And I'm also a writer. And so I really loved the idea. Actually, I had this sort of like secret goal of becoming a writer or writing for my job at some point in my life. And it was kind of like I put it to the side when I first started like searching. And then I sort of realized, oh, I could actually like find a role that's really a dream role for me. And for me, I love teaching, and I loved my students. And I always said that I really wouldn't want to leave the job for just any other job.
Right.
That was just my unique kind of life and or my sort of vision. And so yeah, so it was kind of something that like copywriting and content creating wasn't my first initial thought, but it was something I kind of like, as I did more searching and looking into roles, it became the thing that I was like, oh, this is the right kind of role for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of talk about the journey then from there, and how you prepared for the interviews themselves, because as I'm sure everyone who knows, interviewing for a teaching position is completely different than how you interview for, a position outside of education. So for you, what did that prep work kind of look like? How did you kind of alter what you were used to in terms of how you prepped for a teaching position versus one in marketing?
Well, I always think that any role that you're going to be interviewing for, doing the research on the company and really understanding their mission, their vision, what are their values, is really key. And really that, I mean, honestly, for a teaching job, you should probably do that too.
Right.
Um, but I did a lot of research into the company, and into the role particularly, like what were the skills? I like kind of broke down the job description. Usually what I would do is I would take the job description and I'd put it into a Google Doc, and I would kind of make notes, and I would, highlight things that I think that would be that I'd be asked about. And I would kind of maybe write a note about how I could answer that according to my skills and my experience, really trying to hone in on what were the things that I had experience in and ability to do that would match that or align with that like bullet point of the job description. I also really I spent time really thinking through like how I introduced myself. What was my elevator pitch? I've been on the other side of interviews where that first initial, some of the questions like, tell me about yourself, ends up being a 10-minute explanation. And so you really want to like hone in your elevator pitch to make sure it's really relevant to the job you're applying for. And I'm sure you as a recruiter can kind of understand that, of like really kind of making sure you're concise, but like still thorough in what your answer is. And it's kind of tricky.
Very delicate.
And it really takes time to practice that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So some of the questions that I get, and I'm sure you've handled them as well, as a lot of posts I see, I'll say it that way, from transitioning teachers, is the concern with imposter syndrome. Can I do this? How do I get over this? Do I feel like I'm right in this role? Things like that. So was that something that was a struggle for you initially? And if so, how did you overcome it? If not, how did you kind of combat that, push those thoughts away early on in your job search?
Well, for me, yes, I think imposter syndrome is very easy to feel. And I think as a teacher, there's many times when you're good at what you do. And there's a lot of people that maybe don't always understand what teachers do now. Like they understand education from their experience, like from their viewpoint as a student watching a teacher do what they do. Well, as a student, I didn't quite understand all the things my teacher did until I got into the classroom and really was like, oh, there's so many aspects to being a teacher. Because it is analyzing data, it's planning curriculum, it's responding and relating to students. It's making 1,000 decisions in an hour period of time. And I think that because of that, when you start to apply for jobs, you begin to feel like, I'm just a teacher. What do I know? Right. I'm just a teacher. I don't think I can do that. But the thing that I talk to transitioning teachers about a lot is that you have so many valuable skills that you don't even realize that you're doing them, because it becomes second nature in your day-to-day, right? It's like a trained doctor or nurse or any kind of role that has, the skills that you're doing every single day, right? Like there's things that we just don't think about that we do. And so I really try to break down with teachers, and I did this for myself too, is really think about what are like my top 5 skills? What are the things that I am really proud of? What makes me feel successful at the end of the day? What made me good at being a teacher? Like for me, relating to students, for even coming up with creative ways for students to access content and knowledge is really key for me to like understand of like what I could really do. And I did a lot of self-talk of like, okay, I can do this. I've got something to offer. And that's when I started to think about what can I offer a company? What's unique about me that I have that a company would love to have, right? And so as a teacher, just really kind of honing in on your personality and the things that you make you unique in your role, and make you a good teacher. But then also like, what are the things that the company is looking for, and what could you meet, or how does your experience and your skills align with that? Because sometimes I really do think like you may see a role that's really awesome and great, but you don't get that job because they have someone that's already meeting some of those needs, right? Like some of it is just a fit of whether that like works for the team or not. And some of it is that they're like, that you are what they're looking for. So I did a lot of that, like just a lot of self-talk to come over that imposter syndrome. But still in my role right now, I absolutely have moments where like, I'm a good writer. I'm a good, like I have to like tell myself no, I can do this. I can do, because and I think many writers and creators will relate to that, of like, you sit in front of a blank screen and you're like, I know how to do this. I really do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you actually kind of touched on the next question, and one that I get a lot for me, and it's obviously a different answer for me. Some of the same things, but the transferable skills question. How do you highlight that? What are those transferable skills? So I knew going into recruiting, communication, conflict resolution, performance tracking, those are all things that we do daily as educators and things that I do daily now as a recruiter. So for you, getting into content creation, copywriting, what were some of those skills that you found made that transition a little easier for you? You hinted at some already, but just a deeper dive into it. It's like, okay, yeah, I can do this because I've done this for so long.
Well, I think as a copywriter, one of the things that I have to be able to do is take a concept and break it down to for a reader to really like grasp into certain things, right? And as a teacher, I did that all the time, right? I had to kind of hone in on what was the part that you didn't quite understand, and then like exploring that, expanding that, looking at it from a different angle. So a lot of times I may take a topic and come at it from a very different angle. I need to have some sort of like point to it, right?
Right.
And I was an English teacher, so sometimes my skill is just like, I write a thesis statement? What's my thesis about this this topic? And like, can I like explore that and expand that and prove my point, right?
Right.
As a copywriter. And then as a content creator, I think specifically, and I work for an ed tech company, so I kind of use a lot of my knowledge and understanding of education, but I really think about like, what kind of content connects to people.
Mhm.
And that's the same thing as a teacher, right? I really thought about, how does my content connect? How can I make that stick in someone's brain? How does I make it like them think about it after they leave my classroom? As a teacher, that's what I always hoped, is like they maybe think about what I taught them.
Mhm.
And the same thing. So when I create my podcast, or when I'm like writing interview questions, I really want to get into like, what is the thing that maybe other people are wondering about, and can they relate to this content in some way? And I do all the editing for the podcast, so I really try to like, you know, bring together a storyline, or like a seamless conversation. And
Mhm.
so a lot of that is the same stuff I did as a teacher, really trying to like putting a unit together, a lesson together, of like, can I get my point across? Can do the learners learn what they need to learn by the end of does the reader know what they need to know by the end of reading this? So that's how I think. And then also with marketing too, it really is thinking about what lands with people. What are people's problems, and how can we solve that? And so it really is thinking in that strategically.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, I had to think strategically all the time. So
Yeah. Daily.
there's just things that you like, the more and more I get into the role, I'm really thinking like, oh, I'm, and that plus hardworking and being diligent at what I do, and tracking data, and communicating with people. I think we underestimate the power of being a good communicator. Not everyone has that skill, or like needs, has a high level of that skill. And as a teacher, you communicate all the time. You're talking with students, you're talking with parents, and you're trying to listen and understand. And that's just, I mean, I think any workplace, being a good communicator is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, especially as a middle school teacher, it's a completely different experience. So
Yeah.
that if people have been following you, connecting with you, they know that you've started hosting some coffee chats as well for transitioning educators. So when people sign up for that, what is kind of your goal overall? Is it just kind of an open forum where you're answering questions? Do you try to be more pointed with it and prepare based on who's joining you specifically and tailoring it to their needs? What can people expect if they're signing up to have a coffee chat with you?
Well, oftentimes when people sign up for a coffee shop, a coffee chat, I ask them, if they have a particular question. So like the ones that I have that I host that, for a lot of people to attend, I ask maybe if they have a particular question, so I can start to kind of think through answers of that. I also kind of open forum, letting people just chat and ask questions, ask particular questions of me. And if they want to know more about like my journey and my role, because oftentimes I feel like transitioning teachers, they just need to know that it's possible. They
Yeah.
need to know that, they're not like having this extreme pipe dream of transitioning or pivoting in their career, or even just understanding what a day-to-day outside of the classroom looks like. I think
Mhm.
sometimes people ask me that all the time. What does your day-to-day look like? Because that is very foreign, right? Like
Yeah.
you're used to like being run by the bells or things
Right.
like that. I also spend time, I do lots of one-on-one chats with teachers too. And I ask them about where they're at with their journey, offering, resources that I know I found helpful, giving them insight into, things that I've seen as far as like job, postings about jobs. And even, in all of my searching, like I looked into so many different roles. So I have a lot of knowledge about instructional design roles. And I have, I'm
Yeah.
constantly sort of absorbing all sorts of information about
Right.
the different kinds of roles. Um, and working in a company, I've kind of gotten insight into like how, our customer success department sort of works and looks like. And I know that it looks different everywhere. So that's sometimes often I say, a learning and development role may be titled something completely different in
Right.
many different companies, and so we chat about that, and I give him, an opportunity to ask questions and just hear my story, and oftentimes, and then I also drop in some encouragement because I love to be able to encourage and champion and be a cheerleader to those transitioning teachers, because I know there were people for me that did that, and it was, I mean, strangers I met on LinkedIn, and I was so, so grateful for their help and their insight. And even just their, the person I texted, like, I got an interview, and they were super excited for me because they understood all that went into getting that interview. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just knowing you have support is sometimes the most important factor. So,
Yeah.
last question I'll have for you then is kind of the same question I have to everyone, and that's the advice portion of our chat here. So, is there a piece of advice either that you received during your search that you felt was very beneficial to you, or just a piece of advice that you try to give that's a generic one and not specific to a situation that you think will help anyone who's starting their job search, not necessarily from education, but there's a lot of people just in general looking for jobs. So what's that advice
Mhm.
try to give to anyone that's in that position?
The thing that always pops into my mind is go ahead and shoot your shot, right? Like go ahead and ask, because I think it never hurts to ask someone, right? They may not respond on LinkedIn. If you apply to a job and there's a hiring manager that's attached to that role, it never hurts to send them a kind message of like, hey, I really like what your company's about. I would love a chance to interview, for this role because of this, right? If you have that personalized touch to a message, I think that could mean a lot. And sometimes it just means that your name pops up right
Hmm.
there, and then they
Right.
look at your resume a second time, right? Because
Yeah.
like 7 seconds or something, that they heard that statistic
Mhm.
of hiring managers looking at a resume. And so if you can maybe get another 7 seconds, sometimes that is helpful. Um, but I think that's one thing that pops in my head. And the other part is to not sell yourself short,
Right.
right? Because don't reject yourself before they do, right?
Mhm.
So don't do that. And then, oh, sorry, the last thing that popped in my head. Um, Oftentimes, and maybe you can correct me if I'm totally wrong, but like the job description sometimes is a wish list. And
Mhm.
so you may not meet every single one of those bullet points. And that's okay. Like go ahead and apply. It never hurts to apply.
Mhm.
But it's an opportunity in every application. You kind of hone your skills of what it takes to apply and your understanding of what kind of job you really want. Because not every job you apply for is something you really want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the concept of the perfect candidate is one that's out there, but it's sometimes if there's 10 boxes and you check five, six, seven of them, then that's more than okay too. So absolutely. So Larissa,
Yeah.
I appreciate you so much taking some time out of your day to join me here on the call here. If you're not following Larissa already, make sure you're doing that. If you have more questions or are interested in the coffee chat, be sure to reach out to her. Otherwise, we hope you have a great week ahead and we'll see you next Monday.